11/2024, 7 p.m. at the Bourne Community Building. I'd call the meeting of the Bourne Planning Board to order. The Zoom chat will not be monitored. Participants who wish to speak may raise their hand icon until the chair asks them to unmute. Note that this meeting is being recorded for live broadcast and televised for replay by Bourne TV. If anyone needs audio or visual recording, please acknowledge at this time. And I'd recommend people silence their phones. Thank you. First item on the agenda is the meeting minutes. For the people who are here, we have 4 people from the board in the Zoom, so there's 4 more that are on Zoom that are not here physically. First order is the meeting minutes of 3/28/24. I'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion
I
to,
move that we accept the minutes as presented. This is Liz Brown.
Liz makes a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
second.
Second by John. Any further discussion on a motion to approve by the board? Audience? None. Requires a roll call.
Yes.
Yes.
Abstain.
An abstention. Liz?
Yes.
Catherine?
Abstention, I wasn't here.
Okay. Amanda?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
And myself, yes.
Yeah, I'll make that.
Thank you. Motion passes. Next on the agenda is the 79 Mayflower Road, access determinations continued from 2/8/24. Is the applicant here? Thank you. Floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the board, Attorney Christopher Corain representing the applicant, John Hughes. He's the owner of property at 79 Mayflower Road. Just a little bit of background. I know it's been a while since we were last before the board. Mr. Hughes received a letter of buildability from the building department, a determination of buildability from the building department, but requested that we come before this planning board for a access determination. At that meeting, there was a letter submitted by the town engineer raising some concerns about stormwater management. So at that time, we agreed to engage the services of an engineer and to address those concerns, as well as provide the board with a more a real plan of a proposed development. So the applicant did hire Cape and Islands Engineering to review the site and prepare the plan and prepare a memorandum which this board has received regarding their findings about the stormwater management. Raul Lazard Rivera is here from Cape and Islands to address any of those concerns. I think that we've done what the board has asked as far as getting the engineer involved, reviewing the site, and preparing a plan that addresses stormwater management and adequately addresses that. So I think we've shown that we can, have adequate access to this property and address any stormwater concerns. So with that, I'm going to really turn it over to Raul if the board, likes, so that he can, give you his findings and go over his letter and answer any questions.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. For the record, Raul Isali from Cape and Islands Engineering. And yes, I submitted that little memorandum letter to the board. What we did, we went to the site. Our surveyors surveyed the property from the north side on Mayflower Road to the end of the existing gravel road, and also from the south side on the same Mayflower Road, and then surveyed the property. So we reviewed the information, and we came to the findings. The property could be developed. There is no developed road in front of this specific property. It is a vacant property, the only vacant property in this immediate vicinity of this neighborhood. What's required to do is just extend the existing gravel driveway approximately some 85 feet from the north to access and provide access to the front of the property. In review by phone with the town engineer, we talked about definitely any modification or extension to a roadway would need to be accompanied by proper drainage. So we show how there could be drainage improvements on this extension of the road. And then internally within the the lot itself to develop a residential lot, like it should be done for any residential lot development, proper drainage is also something that should be implemented for any development inside. But for access, all that is needed here is just extending the road. From the north side, there's about a 6-foot elevation difference, but it's not that challenging. From the south side, there's a lot more challenging grades. There's at least 10 foot of grade difference, but then it involves some additional drainage, additional retaining walls. So we believe the best access for this is extending about 85 feet instead of 200 and something feet from the south side. But yeah, I think access is possible from the north side, and adequate drainage can definitely be done for any improvement. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from any board members?
Yeah, I understand the road, and it doesn't seem to be an engineering problem. Let's talk a little more in depth about the drainage, because you look at your overall sort of drainage pattern. There's quite a bit of drainage coming from Lot 84 and the parcel across the street. Is that 89 across the street? And I'm guessing that the road is crowned, so that drainage will be intercepted on the, let's call it the east side of the extended road. And it's a considerable catchment area. Can you describe the drainage improvements? First on the side of Mayflower Road, and then on the south side of Lot 79.
So right, just to go backwards, on the south side, the surface runoff from the south side, we cannot control. That's what's happening on the neighborhood. It's beyond the applicant's property, so that's what's happening today. We wouldn't do anything with it. From the property and to the north, yes, so what we intend is not crowning a road. If you crown a road, you actually split so it is just one pitch. So what we intend is this road gets pitched from west to east, because the east side is the one that has more shoulder, and that's the side that we can physically introduce some surface and some subsurface drainage system. So that's how we would collect some of that drainage that's coming from the north.
Is the drainage from Lot 89 being directed across the road? You've got a swale and a berm built up, and it looks like you want that drainage to go across Mayflower Road to your improvements on the far side.
But yes, from going back to the letter, I believe, from the town engineer, there was some suggestion about berms, which is earth berms, elevated earth berms. So 89, which is the immediate abutter to the north, is much higher than this property. So all of his drainage that is not contained on his property, it's overflowing to this property. So one of the things that we would do is do a combination of a swale and an earth berm and direct that flow towards the road. We don't want, we want to prevent as much as possible off-site runoff from developed sites. It's different if it's an undeveloped site. On developed site, you just have to accept that that water is coming. From developed sites, we want to send it to a drainage system. And then we send it to the road, the drainage collects on the road, and then we contain our own development within the property. Okay. But yeah, other off-site properties, if the drainage from those properties is not being controlled, it's just going to continue to flow down the existing path that it currently does.
Okay. I get what you're doing on 79. There's a considerable catchment that is concentrated on that drainage improvement on the east side of the new road. So I use this word carefully. I mean, that's the point of possible failure. So can you describe, I assume ultimately there'll be a stamped drawing on a site plan that will describe these improvements in some detail. So I'm just saying there's quite a bit of load, catchment load being directed to that. And can you describe that particular drainage improvement?
So there's no real design put forth right now. This is all conceptual of what could be done for the road to be constructed. But yes, if a road is constructed nowadays, the typical type of road design is a combination of surface treatment. Likely you've seen them as drain swales or basins to allow for about the 1 inch of runoff to accumulate. And then there's subsurface, using the subsoil to leach the water, anything that exceeds roughly the 1 inch of surface runoff. None of that has been designed, but that will be the idea. The sizing of it, none of that has been reviewed, but
Well, two
that's
things.
the idea.
Mayflower Road's a private road, so if in the worst of all worlds, that drainage improvement fails, how might that get repaired or remediated?
So right, usually when these drainage systems get designed, it goes hand in hand with a operation and maintenance plan, and there's a requirement that every so often, recommended 4 times a year, at the change of seasons, the inlets and the basins get inspected. Any deficiency that is sought has to be cleaned out. If it's debris that is accumulated in the inlets, that gets cleaned out. If accumulation is above the outlet structure for, I believe, an addition, a day after a storm, then that means that either the pipe is plugged, that needs to be checked and unplugged, or the system itself, the subsurface system, is plugged and needs to be reconstructed.
Is there a neighborhood association? And it's a private road, so the town's not going to do that. Is that approximately correct?
Yep.
Okay. So that's the critical point, what's happening across Mayflower Road. So I certainly hope we will get stamped drawings when this, if and when this proceeds to a site plan.
It won't be a site plan.
This is just road
Yeah,
access.
it's, once we determine access, then the building permit gets issued.
It's a caution, it's a concern.
Well, I agree, I agree. But are you satisfied if,
With the access,
with the concept of subsurface water getting taken care of, or the water getting subsurface discharge in the area? Because that has been the major crux of this argument.
it's the low point, it's where the
Right.
water wants to go.
Right,
I'm not gonna pretend to be an engineer.
right.
I'm just saying, it's a considerable catchment, and if there's a problem with that system, then the problem moves down the hill to number 75, number 71.
But I think
It's a concern.
the whole development, I don't think there's any catch basins.
Okay.
in it.
This is the,
This is critical.
this is the steepest part.
Right.
In that area, so not only would a drainage improvement to the east of the road need, it also would need to be on the south, because that's gonna be pretty good pitch coming into that. I mean, I think everybody on the board knows how I feel about this project.
And we've had other water issues in the Sagamore area and
We've
and other
had too
places
mu-
in town.
Well, and it's always with the private roads, because they're not made to build to
Yep.
subdivision standards, so, and that's, how many times have we seen it with all the private roads?
Yep.
And then they come back and they scream at the town, they want help on it, and I just don't see how it's gonna
Yep.
do it. The other thing that I've noticed is with the concept of the road extension about 85 feet, that may need to be extended even more than that, because, as you know, the fire department requires a turning radius if they have to access their property, and I don't think there's enough there.
Yeah.
So that, instead of being 85 feet extension, it might have to be closer to 100,
Yeah.
or at least to maybe even their property line.
Because again, your plan is conceptual. It hasn't been run through the template for the Bourne Fire Department turning radiuses.
Correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure. And now, Tim, can I ask you, Tim Lyden, town engineer, with determining the access, we only have like one shot at this. Once we grant the access determination, if we grant it, then there's no other chance to take care of the situation that you talk about with the water runoff and making sure that we capture that. With the with the proposed plan and with a engineered stamp plan and a maintenance agreement, would you be more likely to feel good about the access determination? Because right now, your concerns were probably the biggest concerns that this board had.
So my caution to the board was that I didn't want there to be a disturbance of this undeveloped road and create a stormwater issue that we didn't address. I feel as though, talking to Raul, that we're addressing the disturbance of this area. Natural stormwater is going to come across this terrain already. It's hard to contain other areas of this catchment, of the larger watershed, but at least we know that when this disturbance happened, we captured the increase in runoff. And talking to Raul, that is something that they can address.
Okay.
So I think that satisfies what I was speaking to, and that's
Okay.
up to you. Yeah.
Thank you for your input, Tim. Thank you. So with that, are we leaning towards more engineered plans before the access determination to make sure we have things in writing?
I'd like to see that. I don't think it's a huge job. I mean, you've done this before. I'd just like to understand what the system is. What's the proposed drainage improvement? And then I'd like insurance, if indeed we granted access, that it's actually built that way. We've had projects where things have been designed and the contractor built it another way. That's neither here nor there. But it's, again, something we're sensitive to.
I would be open
I agree
to,
with you.
Who was that, Catherine?
Yes, Catherine,
Okay,
sorry.
yep.
I completely agree with you.
Thank you.
Bob.
John?
I think, subject to a roadway and stormwater management plan for the disturbed areas that's satisfactory to the town engineer would be in line, and an as-built at completion.
Yep.
Would it be possible for this board to make those as conditions to this determination? I think that would be, I would hope that that'd be a little bit more appropriate than, obviously spending the money on engineered stamp plans only to have this board, say, no. I think that if town engineer has the opportunity to review the plans that we submit and the O and M, that be conditioned as part of any approval, by this board. I think that would be appropriate.
I think that makes sense. There's a lot of expense to the hydro study and the design.
I agree. It sometimes financing and construction costs on delays.
I appreciate that.
But just with the town planner's office, do you think the town would be comfortable with allowing access be granted on a condition that it meets an engineered plan showing the drainage in the maintenance agreement?
Yes, I think
Okay,
that would
because I
be
just don't want to,
acceptable.
okay, I don't want your office to come back and say, the car was before the horse or whatever. I just want to make sure that we do this in the right step. Any other questions or comments from the board members?
I'm still uncomfortable without seeing the engineered drawings ahead of time. We've seen too many of these private roads go by the wayside, as you said. One thing that they say they're gonna do, and then they don't do it, and if it's not stamped and we're not approving it, we have no recourse, and then 10 years, 15, 20 years down the road, everybody's screaming because of a big water issue. So I think that they should come before us with their engineered plans first.
What about conditioning it and putting it on hold prior, in accepting this, that meets the town planner's office and the town engineering office, and that a building permit will not be issued prior?
I'm fine with that condition. I think that's more than appropriate than to have the, as I said, as Mr. O'Connor said, I don't know what his background is, but you're saying he's not an engineer. I mean, you're relying on your experts
Right.
to review those stamped plans and those engineered plans. I mean, I feel like we've done what this board has asked of us to do, and we're giving we're prepared to allow, the board, the town, engineer and planning department to have further review before any building permit is issued.
Yeah, yeah. Any other questions, comments from the board? Anybody? Liz or Jeannie or anybody have any questions or comments? No? Okay.
It's like the dog.
Sorry, Jean here. My only comment additional question would be about the fire department. Would that satisfy the fire department's access requirements as well?
That would be part of it.
Yeah, the only thing, there was a letter from the fire department. They seemed to suggest that they didn't have jurisdiction or over single and two families, so.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what that means, but it didn't seem that they needed anything further from,
As long as they're satisfied, that's
That's
the key.
fine.
That's the key.
and I'm okay with that.
Okay. Anybody from the audience have any questions or comments? Because one of the things we're trying to maintain or to prevent is any wastewater, stormwater from infiltrating onto any other adjacent properties. Your stormwater from whether it's you or people who are not here, that stormwater is gonna go wherever it's gonna go. They can't mitigate where it's originating from, but they can mitigate the stormwater that's emanating or created from their lot or running off of their lot, and that's what we're trying to contain. Just so everybody has an idea what we're trying to do. If you come to the lectern, how's that?
Finally.
Thank you. Just your name for the record, that's all.
Oh, sure. Roger Young, 14 Holland Road. I guess the biggest concern, and my son-in-law and daughter own the property at 75 Mayflower. So I would say that the biggest concern is that there's an acknowledgement that there is stormwater issues. The property is going to be developed on the backside, which is all fine, but the biggest thing is that there is that assurance from the engineered plans that everything is going to be in its most optimal condition. So that I would say that I would rely heavily on the advice of your town engineer, and that there's a collective agreement that this is reasonable and attainable.
Yes.
So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else from the audience have any questions? Please.
Good evening, I'm Paula Hughes. I just have one comment because it keeps being an issue brought up about the fire department. And just so you know, the fire department isn't going to come to the property and say, oh heck, we can't get down there, we're going back to the station. I mean, they have rules and regulations and they can pull in and they can back out. My son is a firefighter and you, as a fellow firefighter, know this as well. As part of the NFPA number 1901, all trucks are required to have equipment on engine or pumpers to have at least an 800-foot fire hose and a 400-foot fire hose that can be coupled together to make 1,200 feet of fire hose. So if there's a problem with the fire department, there is some way that they're going to get in to put a fire out if need be. And I just wanted to say that there is not an issue with the fire department. So they have signed off on it, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
They did sign off on it, you said?
They had said that there's not an issue.
Okay.
It's a letter.
They were okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure. And being with the fire department, I'm not going to tell the fire department what to do.
No, I understand, but
Just so you understand that.
1,200 feet they can get in.
It's the turning around that we're worried about. It's not getting in, it's getting out as well. But thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments from the audience? Tim, do you have any final comments? You good? Would you like to make any comments? Are we good? Okay, I just want to make sure. You're more than welcome to join us at any time. Chris?
If we rely on their engineering to come forward and Tim reviews it and everything else, and let's say it's not built as they're proposing, we've granted them access, what recourse does the town have?
I would
It
require an
becomes-
as-built.
If there becomes a water issue, what recourse do we have? Now you have to build another catch basin or another leach field?
I think the way the board could protect themselves is do it in a two-step process, that before the board were to, or before the building department were to grant a building permit for the house itself, that as an as-built would be, signed off on by Tim, the town engineer, before any house could be built on the property. I think that's the way, kind of do it in a two-step process in that regard.
Do you want us to have the as-built before a building permit or before an occupancy permit?
As-built of the road.
Of the
Yeah,
road.
as-
Okay,
Yeah, of the road.
prior to a building
Yeah,
permit.
right. If there's a concern about the road drainage not being built in accordance with what we've proposed, then the board, as levers, they could hold up the town could not issue the building
Okay.
permit for the home.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Yep, please. We good? Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board, the public? Seeing and hearing none? I'd entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion to grant access, subject to a satisfactory review by the town engineer, planner, for a engineered roadway plan, including drainage, subject to an as-built once it's completed, and the building permit subject to those two previous conditions being met.
I have a motion made. Motion made by John, seconded by Doc. Any questions or comments on the motion from the board? From the audience?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Do you
Jen.
want to have another condition to submit an O and M plan?
Yes, sorry.
So you would like to amend your main motion to include an O and M plan?
Yes, to amend the motion to include an O and M plan.
You want a second?
Yes,
Okay.
second that.
Motion on the amendment. Let's go to the amendment first. Motion to amend the main motion.
Yes.
Roll call. No?
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
And yes for me. Now to the main motion to approve it on those conditions, those three conditions, for the access determination to be granted.
Yes.
The motion has been made, has been seconded. Any further discussion on that motion from the board members? From the audience? Seeing, hearing none, requires a roll call.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Liz?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
And yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Guys, have a great night.
I'm gonna just change the chat.
Yep.
I'll say it now, so I can say it later. I told you so. In 10 years, I'm gonna say, I told you so.
Okay. We good, Jen? Yes. Okay. Next on the agenda is a presentation from Tim Lyden from the engineering department. First, Tim, if you don't mind, we'll do one at a time.
Yeah, I'm gonna go.
First one is the Main Street and Academy Drive inspection and improvements. It also requires a report from the planning board to the Board of Selectmen, so that's what the presentation is about, and also to update us and the public.
Okay, Tim Lyden of the Engineering Department, thank you for having me. So I'm doing a presentation tonight on our Academy and Main Street project. We've been working on this going back to 2020, actually before 2020 when we actually commissioned the report. A report in May of March 2020 was completed by Beta Group for ADA improvements and traffic signaling improvements for this intersection. I don't know how we started that, but as we got into it, we started to realize that we really didn't have a great ADA system around this intersection, and the speeds were relatively high. I don't know if there was changes made to the traffic light. Myself and Matt Swick will be looking into that. But for the most part, making simple ADA accommodations would really go a long way here. And I brought up this screenshot to show the dead space on the side of the road, where the sidewalk meets the roadway. You know, typically in a road system like this, you do want some traffic calming measures. Not to mention, if you're coming from Wareham and you go through the rotary and come down the hill, there is an accelerated speed to get up the hill and clear it and go over that. I think anybody that's traveled that rotary knows that. So when you do come through that rotary and you come over that hill and you got a green light coming through here, you go through this intersection, you say, oh, there's some pedestrian crosswalks, all set, made it through. Next thing you know, 150 feet later, you're right up on another crosswalk. And this crosswalk is generally hidden by a parking spot. And the idling for the pedestrian is back by the window of Mahoney's. So in review with that intersection report, it talked about how we needed to have a little bit more bump outs for the pedestrian access. Now, the reason we can't really hit this project and took this on We applied for the Shared Spaces and Streets grant from Mass DOT during that time during COVID when everybody wanted to facilitate outdoor seating. We, hit the streets. We tried to see who really needed outdoor seating, and it wasn't exactly a need in the downtown community. We have a lot of space, a lot of dead space. I think most of the restaurants, were getting by without, utilizing public space is what I'm trying to say, coming out into the town domain. So we pivoted and said, well, what about this ADA accommodations we're trying to make with the report from Academy in Maine? And it was perfect. And we hadn't applied yet. I think we applied for the third round of that grant, which is pretty much your shoe-in as soon as you apply the first time. So I'll transition right to the changes that our consultant, Environmental Partners, has been extremely responsive and dedicated on this project. That grant got us $200,000 all in. This project is going to cost us about $450 right now on paper. So as you can see, we made changes to the sidewalk in front of Mahoney's and where the barber shop and 45 Main Street is. Instead of having those hashed lines, we're going to have the sidewalk come out into the road. That'll provide natural traffic calming and speed assistance. We're taking away the crosswalk that I showed you that was in front of Mahoney's. It's so close to the intersection.
That's that one, right?
Yeah, so this one right, let me change my screen sharing. View share. So here's the conceptual plan showing a colored rendering of the work that we're proposing here. So all in all, we're not losing any parking spaces, which was key for us because we know on that west end it's been a hot topic, especially at this board. The hope was to show that we could get pedestrians out into the road further. So when they'd cross the road, there's a shorter gap. And eliminating that crosswalk by Mahoney's and actually eliminating the other crosswalk on the eastern side and settling with one somewhat in the middle but closer to that eastern side would actually give some sight lines and some opportunity for vehicles to slow down after they go through the green light. I'm really happy with what we're proposing here. There's a little bit of traffic calming past the intersection by the Buzzards Bay Park. Naturally, when you start messing with things like that, things like drainage come into play. You're moving parking around. There's electrical handholds that we're moving around. So I know $500,000 seems like a lot of money, but I feel like this is a really good start to, a redevelopment of the West End that is going to allow for potential of future street furniture, actual cafes that can do outdoor seating if they so prefer on that extended sidewalk. We're going to do a textured pavement in the center of the intersection, add an aesthetic value to it, and also gives it a gateway treatment. We have the train depot there, we have the Cape Cod Canal, we have our Buzzards Bay Park, we have our Buzzards Bay Marina that people forget about. It's the entrance to Mass Maritime, it's the entrance to Cape Cod. It's really, this pavement's really something we wanted to make sure we went through on. And I really appreciate DPW's support. Matt came on and really hit the ground running on this project. We're working with some Chapter 90 funding with this as well. But I really think this textured pavement is really going to put it over the top and really add a lot of value to that style. And it could be, something for future intersection improvements to come. And it could be something of a little bit of a trademark for us. So I guess with that, I'll leave that for any comments.
Thank you. I have I only have one question on the project. Is in the crosswalks themselves, is there any way to illuminate the crosswalks like they did at the Rotary? So when you hit it, because there are no streetlights
Right.
down on this end. That's the darkest end of Main Street. And to cross the crosswalk at night, you don't have the illuminate, because the streetlights there are very dim. And I didn't know if there was any kind of illumination when you hit the button like you do at the Rotary, that it illuminates the sidewalk and illuminates the pedestrians.
So right now, my main focus was to try to create somewhat of a foundation
Yep.
for this project.
Okay.
We are making sure that the electrical handholds are installed. We're making sure that there's room and basis for the foundations for future light improvements.
Good.
Especially lights at the bump outs.
Thank you.
I know the West End is still, as far as our streetscape improvements go, we didn't add those nice, beautiful black gloss streetlights on that western end. It's something we are looking into as a follow-up project, but it's not included in this project, but we're making sure that we're not leaving ourselves restricted
Good.
to that.
Thank
So.
you. Any other questions from any board members here? Anybody up?
I just have a quick question.
Chris.
Tim, on the, say, the park side, where you're eliminating the current crosswalk that goes over towards Mahoney's, it looks like you bumped that out considerably in that area. Is that your intent, to bump the road out a little bit?
To bump the sidewalk out?
Yeah, move the sidewalk out into the street area so that nobody
Yes.
will park near that before that crosswalk?
Well, right now,
You're talking eliminating two and putting one in the middle.
yes.
It looks to me, from looking at that depiction, that you're pushing that road out, sort of like a bump out.
Yeah, we're doing bump outs. What it looks like right there is actually new pavement that we're gonna put down, because we're gonna tear it up for the bump outs. But we're also adding, I forgot to mention that we're adding ADA tracking pads as well, the warning pads at those intersections, which we don't have. But yeah, there's a bump out there, so we're adding sidewalk in that area, which I think is gonna function well with the Buzzards Bay Park. Gives you a little bit more of an entranceway. Yeah. And that curvature is going to help slow down cars.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
All right, any
Yeah,
other?
Jean here.
Who's that?
Jean here.
Jean, yep.
I also, we had a similar presentation for design review committee, and at that time, we discussed how you're putting the wiring and everything underground, so you can also do, besides lighting, to do audible crosswalks in the future as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Good. Anybody else? I'd entertain a motion to maybe endorse this project.
I would make a motion that we endorse this. I think it's great. I think it's long overdue.
Thank you. Motion by Chris. Do I have a second? Second. Second by Doc. Any further discussion on the motion to endorse the project? Seeing and hearing none. Requires a roll call. John?
Yes.
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 Liz?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Amanda? Yes. Jean?
Yes.
And myself, yes, unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Great job.
Thank you.
He's got more going.
Oh,
MS4.
All right, Tim, the floor is yours on B, the MS4 Green Stormwater Infrastructure.
All right, great.
Aren't we just talking about stormwater? Oh, yes.
Yes, stormwater is probably our favorite subject at this point. So MS4, just quick background. This was EPA's regulatory reach to say that governments need to control their water runoff into waters of the U.S., all in all. We can talk till we're blue in the face. I mean, we've been regulating private development for so long. This was finally to say towns need to be responsible for what they discharge into our waters and start to pay attention to that. When that was brought up, a lot of municipalities said, well, a lot of our runoff sometimes is from abutters. So they came up with an illicit discharge portion of the regulations. But what you guys have here today is a memo. One of the requirements is that municipalities look inward to basically discuss, are we allowing green infrastructure? Are we, disincentivizing green infrastructure? They want municipalities to look at what they're requiring as pertaining to low impact development, the creation of impervious area, and they want us to assess the current street designs and the parking lot guidelines and other local requirements that affect the creation of impervious cover, and see if it determines that there's any changes to the design standards for streets and parking lots that we can make that would help support low impact development. It's all pragmatic. It's really, well thought of stuff. It's the goals that we can try to strive towards, but also we all know every project's different. It requires different things. Not every roof needs to have sod and a developed green roof. We're very fortunate to be in the Northeast where, our precipitation allows us to have stocked water supplies and, things like that. So this report was to review a lot of these sections that we have, a lot of these topics that we have. I tried to reference where they were referenced in our regulations and how we already have a requirement and if it exists or not. And I did make recommendations. And like I said, this conversation goes beyond this meeting. This is really just an introduction and to give you guys this report to say in the future, if we're going to consider talking about, street designs for the subdivision regs, maybe we can consider some of these recommendations. You know, I don't want to make it seem like I'm forcing this down your throat. This is more or less a discussion as a town to say what works for us. And I will say, looking into our subdivision regulations, we are already moving towards a lot of the recommendations that were made. We do allow for narrow roads that are as narrow as 18 feet wide. You know, we do encourage, I think, bioswales and open surface areas, and some places have the horizontal space to do that. But in reality, some places don't. So there's the nuance and understanding that you guys make at your level to allow, and like I said, to make sure we're not forbidding certain green infrastructure would be my goal. But also, can we incentivize it? Maybe. That's where like a lot of nuance would come into these regs. But I just want to touch on a few topics real quick that are in this report. I know it's 9 pages, but it just talks about the basic topics. So we talked about surface runoff enough. Green infrastructure design, I feel like there's no specific guidelines that reference low impact development and green infrastructure in our zoning bylaw, but the downtown design guidelines, they do address it. And that was really encouraging to see, because we talk about green roofs, we talk about cisterns, and we do encourage that, but those are just guidelines. But I do think it allows developers to design a project that fits to what their wants and desires are. So that was really encouraging to see. But maybe we could reflect that in our zoning regulations in the future. Our landscaping, I felt more or less touched upon materials and spacing of trees as opposed to their function as stormwater infrastructure. I think maybe that's something we could review in the future to say, hey, these islands that we require in our parking lots, can we combine those with stormwater and maybe see, what other municipalities are doing? Because there's a lot of really, things that you see and you're like, wow, that just makes sense, and I think there's a lot of things we can learn if we were to look at parking lot and landscaping for the parking lots. Like I said, street designs, there's some things we're already doing. I was really happy to see that, but maybe, allowing for certain areas for pervious pavement. I know when a lot of people talk about pervious pavement, they say, oh, it silts in, we can't use this, we can't put it here. I think you can't depend on things like pervious pavement to be your stormwater, but it can be an accessory to the plan, whether it's a shoulder or, maybe areas at your high point where you don't need that much maintenance. Because in reality, even when they silt in, they still function even at 50%. They do a good job. So the more I'm learning about a lot of those things, I think that's something that maybe we could roll out in this community. Discussing things like locations of utilities. Sometimes it's easier to go on the soft shoulder than to go underneath the pavement, but maybe, reserving the shoulders for bioswales or, country drainage and things like that. We do already allow low points to provide, natural drainage, but we really just talk about that in its generality as opposed to maybe making suggestions or a design guideline in our subdivision regs. We don't have any real drainage requirements for sidewalks. To me, sometimes it's negligible depending on how long the sidewalk is. Parking lots, we talk about the requirements. That's a sensitive subject, I know, especially in different areas of town. It's been a real struggle for us in the downtown to really understand where we want parking and where we can really have, transit areas. But it just talks about maybe allowing for relief for parking in those transit areas, like maybe the West End. Talked about driveways a little bit. That was the last topic. I really could have went into a whole nother report for lot requirements. I felt like that may deserve a bigger discussion. It wasn't something I wanted to tackle at this time, but that was the only thing I omitted that I felt like the MS4 requirements wanted us to talk about. But that's a whole nother beast. So I'm confident that I made enough practical recommendations that we could consider in the future anytime we go to review these things. But for the most part, I think we're doing a lot of really progressive things here in town. I think every time we've taken a step forward in this direction. And, anything you guys consider you want me to work on with the planning department and DPW, we're already kind of moving towards things on MS4 already, so.
And again, with the lots, anytime you feel like you want to try to present those, to this board, please feel free to get a hold of Jen. We'll put you right on the agenda for any of that kind of stuff. But one of the things, I just want to inform a lot of people that with the subdivision regulations, any changes in that just requires a majority vote here of the planning board.
Yeah.
It doesn't require going to town meeting. So anything that we see, or you guys come up with, if you guys want to work with Tim in the town planner and make any kind of adjustments, it just requires a simple majority vote here to make those changes. So, Tim, same thing, if you see something in there that you'd like to change, or if you'd like to change, if there's something in there you want, it's, on the lifting scale, it's a very low lift versus town meeting. So those changes can be done, it's just a public hearing here, and it's just a majority vote of the board. So we definitely appreciate everything that you've done in your presentation tonight. So, again, thank you very much. Anybody else here?
I was just gonna comment that, as you said, Tim, I think we've already started on this trek already. I know when we approved Mr. McKenzie's project, we made him put in the vegetated swales out in the back of Cohasset Ave, which I thought was forward-thinking, although I do know that when we get a high tide, the water comes up through those vegetated swales as well as goes down, so. But is there any thought from the EPA and stuff about low-lying areas like Buzzards Bay or like Provincetown, where a lot of our road runoff, we know where it goes into the big ditch? How else are we supposed to take care of that? They must recognize that we can't take care of it all underground.
Right. So I will tell you, we were required to identify all of our stormwater assets. We have 320-something outfalls mapped.
Yeah.
We have Buzzards Bay National Estuary Program doing wet water testing for us to identify hotspots for pollutants. We're starting to identify our outfalls that are the worst, and we can come in with projects here and there to remediate them. We have a couple pilot green stormwater infrastructure projects coming up in the next year or two. So internally, we're learning a lot of lessons, I think, with that. But no, the EPA wants us to identify, these bad outfalls and what can we do.
Right.
Like you said, groundwater's high on some things, so sometimes infiltration doesn't work.
Yeah,
but the horizontal spaces.
They are
can be there.
everywhere. They're not just on Main Street and the canal. I mean, how many beaches have an outfall pipe dumping into where the kids are
Even road
swimming?
cuts. I mean, you'd be surprised what we
Right.
found once we really started to look at the net. They would think like a water drop. Like
I mean,
water is going to find its way to that
Right.
ocean.
We started to do this when the town started to work with the Buzzards Bay Coalition on all the boat ramps, where we put those French drains across the road to try to capture it. So it wasn't just shooting down the ramp and into the road. So I think we've started that way, but I just wonder, I don't think we're gonna be able to capture it all, but.
No, but I mean, we're making incremental improvements. We're aware, I mean, reading the MS4 permit, you learn a lot just about, hey, yeah, that is the way we should be thinking about these things. And we're making moves here in Bourne. We're meeting the permit, and this is one of the things we consider going forward to make improvements to the town.
And Chris, like you had mentioned, the runoff into the canal, Route 25 has got a huge drain. It goes right, Route 25 Express right to the canal.
So I say the
way
MS4 permit, every municipality has its own permit.
Yeah.
Mass Highway has their own permit as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, I'm just.
They're non-traditional.
Yeah, but it skips right through town, so I
Permitting.
just want to make sure.
But I think the idea of
Doc.
identifying outfall hotspots and then going maybe to the upper end of that system and looking for opportunities to at least
Divert, yeah.
or reduce or infiltrate the flow from one at a time. It's going to take a while. But you're sort of in this every day, and I'd be very interested if you come across technical documents or things that are helpful for us so that we're not trying to get smart when you do a presentation, and just send them to the planning department for distribution to us. I'd be interested in those types of things, successful projects, technical papers,
Yeah.
things like that, just so that we can
And maybe
start to get up to speed.
maybe what other towns have already started to do. And something that's worked, and we could take a look at it. And
So right now, we're doing, go ahead.
Sorry, this is Liz Brown. I'd be interested in what kinds of incentives you see that have been effective.
Well, bringing in, a rain garden in your landscape area and having drainage in your green areas could allow for more parking, and then maybe if you allow for permeable pavement, you say, oh, you can do more ground cover, things like that. Or, You know, a green roof is adding green space to the site, you know, and I don't know how those function, and I can't tell you if they last or what the operation and maintenance manual would be for that, but there could be some trade-offs that we could allow, but.
So like in a parking lot where we have those green islands that separate maybe a driveway from the actual parking area, instead of having that raised, make it like a rain garden,
Depression, yeah.
pressure everything in.
And if you can eliminate some catch basins, that's quantifiable. So that's an incentive
Yeah.
for people proposing developments.
So,
I get it.
so internally, we're doing a watershed assessment for the Queen Sewell Pond. We're starting to look at freshwaters as well. We're designing a project with the grant from the Buzzards Bay National Estuary Program to actually do a green stormwater infrastructure improvement at Queen Sewell parking lot. So that'll be really interesting to follow with you guys. We'll have some information on that. Also, one of the things for that grant is we're doing some training with DPW and the Conservation Department and the Engineering Department. We're actually going to install a rain garden over by the finance wing at Town Hall. It's going to be about 300 square feet. We definitely wanted to have something representative by the town to say, hey, you can do this at your home. You know, if we're all trying to, you know, pitch in and people have ideas of what can I do, rain gardens can look beautiful. And we're starting to realize, you know, if you just let nature do its thing, that's what these things were put here for. So, and the other part of it is the maintenance. You know, we get these really intricate operation and maintenance plans from private developers, from like Bracken and whatnot. So we're already having a lot of these GSI developments on private property. I always try to tell people, don't be scared. We're not pruning bonsai trees. You know, a lot of it's really just deadhead it in the spring, maybe put some mulch down in the fall, and there's really not too much otherwise, you know, mowing and typical weed whacking.
We learned that because I was working with Mr. McKenzie at the time, you don't want to put mulch in those, especially if you have a drain going.
Exactly. And they started to use rock beds, 'cause people have
floats.
learned their lessons with the mulch.
Floated, and then where there was a water reached a certain level and it hit a pipe, and it would just clog that pipe, so that's not a good idea.
Yeah, so every
Better off with stone.
Yeah, every project's different, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments
I
from the
like
board?
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
Thank you
I
very
like
much, Tim. And again, the subdivision regs, anything that we come across that would like to change, please take a look at, I'm asking the board members to take a look at that. If you'd like to see something improved, changed, edited, please bring it forward. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the discussion on changes to the zoning bylaw, a multifamily housing MBTA Section 3A draft red line amendments.
Just want to speak to it.
Jen, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So everybody, I sent the draft red line highlighted changes of the proposed bylaw. And I guess we can go back just a few months. So what we were doing over the past like 6 months or so was doing compliance modeling with the Cape Cod Commission and what we did was we looked at a lot of the details for the compliance modeling, and what we came up with was that the downtown core, Gateway, and the waterfront have the capacity to do 15 units per acre. We also did some modeling for 20 units per acre, and it has a capacity to do up to that as well. In looking at it, there are a lot of things, just going forward, I kind of wanted to just kind of lay out a schedule for us. The state has a pre-adoption application, which the town can do to make sure that it complies before bringing it to town meeting. There are a couple of things that I still have questions about. We have inclusionary zoning in our downtown, and we actually have to see and possibly do an economic feasibility analysis to make sure that it's not a restriction on allowing the multifamily units permitted by right. So that might be something that we do have to look into. And also for the public outreach. So right now, we have the goal to bring it to the special town meeting this fall. I was hoping to submit a pre-adoption application, and have the board take a look at these changes. I've met a lot with the Cape Cod Commission and their planners, and I went through the entire downtown district code, went through everything with a fine-tooth comb. And this is the first stab at it, but when it really comes down to it, it's just changing the allowable uses in table 2821 to allow apartment buildings permitted by right rather than a special permit. I also highlighted this functional standard and criteria to delete out no more than 10 dwelling units, because I think that would be too restrictive. It's not permitted on Main Street, which I think is fine. I talked to the commission about that, because you don't want, you want the
Canyon.
commercial, right, you want the commercial along the ground floor of Main Street. So I think that's good. And then, when you go into the dimensional standards on table 2831, we had to enter a lot of this data into the spreadsheet to come out with the density that, could be allowed in the downtown. And it's 15 units per acre is going from 3,500 square feet of lot area down to 2,900. So, and then by special permit, it would be less than 2,000. So also market income, the affordable units would go from 2,500 to 2,000. And then by special permit is 1,500 to less than 2,000. And I think another thing for the board to discuss is the table of parking requirements for multifamily dwelling units. And required parking is currently 1.5 spaces per dwelling unit plus 1 guest space for every 10 units. And the standard is down to 1 space per dwelling unit, so that might be something the board wants to consider.
I want to consider that, for sure.
Yep. Then, loading areas, you may want to look at that as well. And I put the definitions in the email that I sent out to you. I think the one change for the definitions, which I saw today, was the multifamily dwelling. Our definition is 3 or more dwelling units on a single lot, irrespective of structure type, ownership, or tenure. And the definition that the state has for multifamily dwelling units is a little bit different than this. It says 3 or more dwelling units on a single lot, but it also says it can be 2 structures with more than 1 unit in each. So very similar to the 46 Holt Road where it was 2 duplexes. So I think that definition will be changed to match. And I think the board should kind of go through and maybe discuss it, and we'll talk about it more as we go through. For the public outreach, I'm thinking, create a presentation, maybe have, more meetings to kind of go through and really work this out, and have some frequently asked questions, like an FAQ sheet. The Cape Cod Commission is going to assist the town with developing a website to put a lot of the content in there that will be needed for this. We have an approved action plan, so we do have interim compliance through December of 2025. These zoning changes would need to be made before that time frame. So the goal of bringing it to special town meeting, I think is good, or
Yeah.
it would go to next annual.
Our target date would be this fall.
Yes.
With a backup plan next spring.
Yes, yes. The commission will also help with some 3D visual modeling to see, how areas would look with more density, and, especially in the downtown, and how you could kind of infill in certain areas. what would be the best. And I think that's about it for now.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any questions from anybody here?
Yeah, maybe I'm just being dense here, but in the first page, the table DTD1,
Yes.
you've got highlighted permitted by right with a ground floor limitation. The next column, is that existing conditions not permitted on Main Street? Because on 2822, it talks about lots with frontage on and orientation towards Main Street. I guess I'm a little confused between table DTD1 and then section right below it, 2822. I'm missing something.
I just left 2822 in there just
Right.
to explain what the ground floor limitation is.
Okay, all right, so I guess let me rephrase that. Under the permitted by right is multifamily allowed on Main Street with a ground floor limitation.
I don't think it will be,
Oh, really? What's the thinking?
because a ground floor limitation, the first floor has to be commercial.
Sure, agreed.
Right, so then that would make it a mixed-use development and not an apartment building. So I think that GFL has to be deleted out of here,
Yeah.
right?
I like the idea of commercial on the first floor, but I'm just trying to make sure that multifamily is allowable on Main Street.
Yes, it is.
It is.
Yeah.
A 100%
No, not 100%.
apartment building.
With-
Oh,
with-
okay.
With ground floor, with commercial on the first floor, it seems to make sense to allow
Right.
housing on Main Street.
Where we just, the lot that they just
Oh,
cleared.
yeah,
they tore
okay, I
down the
understand
building.
what you're saying now.
Where it used to be where ASAC's
Yeah.
sneaker was.
Right you
That's
are.
mixed
We
use.
approved that,
It's gone
that
already?
is
Yeah.
Been away.
commercial on the front
Yep.
and then apartments
Understood.
above, so,
Right.
yeah, we do have it.
Fine. It just,
But the use table actually has a different use for mixed use. So this is only apartment buildings.
pure apartment block.
Pure
46 whole row.
apartment, 100%
46
apartment.
Got it.
Right, right, so
But
I do
that's
think
not
I need to take
on
that
Main
out.
Street.
Right. Same thing, it would be
It's
like
in
the rear of
Right.
St. Margaret's Church, that area.
All right, I guess I'm just being dense. That's all. I just,
No, so I think I'll delete out that ground floor limitation here because that is no longer applicable to apartment buildings. That's only applicable for mixed-use development use.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
And then it has all this other criteria in here as well. And, I mean, I'll definitely ask about the not permitted on Main Street, but I think that's okay, because I have talked it through with the commission about that, because even though you're not allowing it on the properties that front on Main Street, it can be allowed, on properties outside of the Main Street.
Right.
Like if it has an address of, 1 Main R as the rear, that's usually how the addresses go, it would be allowed in the rear.
That's the way we designed it when we did
Yep.
the bylaw at the beginning.
Yeah.
Any other questions from guys? Anybody, any questions up there?
Up there. You
On
in
Zoom?
Zoom land?
Yeah.
I have none.
No? We're good?
I'm interested now.
One at a time.
What's that? Who's that?
Amanda.
Amanda?
Hi, sorry, no, I don't have any comments.
All right. Well, very good. Well, thank you, Jen, for your input.
You're
And-
welcome.
And we'll keep on that. Any questions, comments, throw them to the planners department?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll keep moving, keep moving forward on that. Again, our target is the fall.
Yes, so public meeting, hearing would probably have to be around August.
August, yeah.
Timeframe, yep.
So anybody has any ideas of a public outreach?
that's
Kind of thing.
key. That's key.
Just throw those questions.
What does it look like? Are there examples of this type of template installed
maybe-
somewhere?
Maybe do one north and one south, if we can. One north of the bridge, one south of the bridge.
Oh,
Outreach.
Yeah, we could
Oh,
do-
outreach, yes,
do one
yes.
here and
Yes.
one at
Sorry.
the
Uh,
Talk about areas.
Yeah, but just some ideas. I mean, we'd like
Yeah,
to try to
yeah.
schedule those places, and it may be, we'll make it at a public hearing, so we could post a quorum and stuff like it, so if we have a quorum.
And the website, we can put a lot of different links on there as well. There is a lot of information on Section 3A and the multifamily housing, and so when you go on the website, it's Mass Housing Partnership has a lot, CHAPA has a lot of information, the state has a lot of information. And I think it'll be good, if anybody has suggestions for what you want to see on the website, I'm thinking the action plan, links, there's a lot of YouTube videos, regarding it. We'll put the modeling on there as well.
I think once it's on there and everybody starts looking at it, then we'll have a better idea as another link or something else that we need to add to it.
And
'Cause it'll take a while.
I would say visuals are key. That
Yeah.
is, finding attractive examples.
Right.
That, people see the stuff, and this is the bones of it.
Yeah.
But they may just fly over it just because, comic book level.
Right, right.
I agree.
So,
Like a military manual.
and before we,
Sixth grade.
anybody has any motion for adjournment, I just want to make sure I bring up that the bridge replacement open house is on May 17th, here at the community building, from 12 to 3 and 5 to 8.
Right. And then there's,
It's just, so May 17th,
and there's
right
one-
here.
There's one coming up with them, a Zoom.
And there's a Zoom as well, but
26.
that'll be in person here.
Yeah, I think that's the 26th.
So with nothing left on the agenda, I'd entertain a motion to
So
adjourn.
moved.
Motion by Chris, do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Doc. All in favor?
Yes.
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 Liz?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Amanda?
Yes.
Jean?
Yes.
And yes, by me, we're adjourned. Thank you very much for all your participation.
Thank you.
Thank you.